Or is it capable of launching more?
So yeah, if there's CCP people here, they probably know the long backstory of that. Originally it had 7, and then going way back, the original Dragon design was a propulsive landing on land with 7 people on board and 4 windows. That turned out to be really, really hard. And so it went to 4 people and a water landing with chutes. There's still 2, if you look, I don't know, you probably can't see this imagery. There's actually like the hole at the outer mold line kind of carving where those windows were. And the 7 seats, the 3 other seats are basically where we put cargo now. And if you recall, after Frank Rubio's Soyuz had the propellant, the radiator leak, and you guys did a bunch of work to figure out like emergency return scenario, they actually opened up a lot of that analysis and worked from back in the 7-seat configuration as to how you would get someone back in emergency in his potential, his case potentially unsuited, dropping to the floor. But yes, it could, but it is not certified currently as nominal operation. But yeah, from a CG standpoint and a load standpoint, yes, but there's no restraint system there now that would actually secure a person for that. So we're inside 10 minutes. Actually, if you want to turn, go ahead. You've got a question? Yeah.
How do you keep the rocket from falling over with the people inside?
So how do we keep the rocket from falling over people inside? So there's a thing called a strong back, and then the whole tower is basically holding the rocket up. So if you look at that, the second display from the second big screen in the upper left, you kind of get a picture of a launch pad. The black part on the right side of that is the elevator and the scaffolding, and then there's a arm that's already been retracted. That's how the crew gets out there, and then just saw a bird fly through. There's a thing called a strong back that's like a triangular shaped piece of metal, and that will tip back. But until the rocket's ready to go, it's kind of holding it, bracing it there. But honestly, once it's got fuel on it, it's pretty heavy, so it's not going to easily tip over. The people are pretty light compared to all the fuel, so it's actually pretty stable in that configuration. And on the way back down, you do have to be careful when you come back into entry. There's a thing called center of gravity, and it's very sensitive in the Dragon vehicle. So they carry about even where we put water bottles for re-entry, believe it or not. And so you have to manage and track all those things, where it went, where the cameras are at, where the empty bottles are at, the full bottles are at, because it has to do with how the vehicle, when it comes back to the atmosphere, controls itself, and they have a model of what the vehicle weighs. And where the people are at and where all the things are at. So it's more important actually on the landing than it is on the takeoff. So
That's coming up in just a few seconds. And that is a key process that prepares the engine.
If you got questions, go ahead and ask. I'll talk over it if we need to, but that way you can hear the.
I turned down, Roger. Can we turn down? We can turn it down a little bit until you're ready.
I'm fine with it. I wish I could hear, but like I said, if you have questions, just throw out and I'll talk over it as we go.
Engine pumps, chilling the engines before the start sequence. We do this because the super chilled and densified liquid oxygen is really, really cold, and we use this.
So the other unique thing about Dragon, and again, if you were on CCP early on, it's not unique anymore, but revolutionary, I would say 7-8 years ago, was the idea of the load and go. So that was a thing NASA never even considered or thought was completely unsafe, and we've kind of gotten, I would say, okay with it, but gotten actually quite good at it. And that's what allows the instantaneous launch windows. But there's very little margin in the Falcon 9 prop loading, and so that's why it's an instantaneous launch window. It's boiling off faster than they can load it at a certain point. It's very similar actually on Starship design or HLS design. There's no active cryo cooling, it's just that flow that's much like overcome the problem of mass and volume and try to ram in more than can go off. But that also means we can't see it.
That the second stage is completed, or about to be completed here in just a second.
The other big difference is there's a launch escape system, which shuttle didn't have, and that was the other way we got comfortable with that concept.
Combined with the densified kerosene that just finished up loading. The RP1 liquid propellant needs an oxidizer to combine with everything in order to ignite. Coming up at the 5-minute mark, we'll hear the call for Dragon to configure.
Actually, for Windows, it's blacked out, so if you look at the lower left quad, where you see the crew, above that far MS1 seat, above their left knee, you can see a window. There's not actually a window there, but that's the cutout where the 2 other windows would have been, which we always lament, because that would have been an amazing view for to have 2 more windows, but it doesn't work out.
So, Raja,
Yeah.
how does the launch escape system work? Like they press a button and then what?
So there's actually a handle, you can't see it, but it's on the display panel, it's in between
So next
Spanky
up in
and
the countdown,
Zena's
the transporter
hands, like,
erector or
both, like,
TE
she
will
would reach it with her
begin to
right hand, he could
retract
reach it with his
from
left
the
hand as a
Falcon
turn and
That is the
where
large
it's like a
truss structure
rotate and
you
like
see
kind of
there
comes out.
standing next to the rocket.
And so
It's hinged at the
you
base
have
and
one of the
connected to
screens
launch
you have
out
up is
beneath the
showing
first
all the
stage.
launch escape
First,
parameters.
the clamps
So I
around the
can't remember
second
all off the
stage
top of the
will
head, but there's like
begin to
a G loading, roll rate, so a bunch of parameters that if they violate, it's gonna trigger escape. But then the crew also has the ability to manually trigger. And then they actually, slim down the loops. The reason they control access to the main flight loop is so no one can inadvertently tell the crew to launch escape if there's like some, crazy person that wanted to say that and trigger it. So they actually lock down the loops, and then there's actually a code word that they'll brief you prior, that they'll say in advance, so that, again, someone doesn't say escape or something like that, and you like grab one. But that's one of the parameters they're watching, and then they have that
It
handle
provides
is
fuel,
the
power,
short answer.
telemetry, and command connections between ground systems and the
But
rocket.
assuming
Those
the
clamps
primary
at the top
plan
help
though is
stabilize
the
second stage during
vehicle
fueling,
executes
and
it,
they also help prevent movement
that
in
would be
high winds.
pretty rare,
And once
maybe
they
some like
open,
fire
which you can see on your
cases,
screen,
or
they
like,
are
or the
slowly
system
pulling
doesn't
away.
recognize it's got a problem.
And
And
once
the
they
other
open
thing is maybe
fully,
some
the
kind
rocket
of
is fully free
external
at the top.
threat to the vehicle that they would trigger a lot, that they would tell you to manually trigger the escape.
Propellant continues to be loaded late here in the countdown as we're approaching 3 minutes and 30 seconds. We're continuing to keep an eye on the weather, and that's going to be the biggest thing as everything continues to march towards that liftoff timeline.
Someone
But you
else
see
had a
that
hand up a
strong
second
back
ago,
starting
when you
to
asked that.
did.
Oh,
She
she
asked
asked
me
me.
a
Wow,
question.
wow, you guys are in sync.
open, and you also see those white clouds starting to build off the rocket itself. Those are perfectly normal as it's the coolness of the propellant on board is mixing with that warm Florida air, and that's what causes that boil off and that, you heard Nick talk about it earlier, when you have that steam come off the rocket, so it looks like a lot of clouds going off it as well. But approaching the T-minus 3 minute mark, and that's when
I was in 16
and then
and
you're done, they start complete, so everything is primed and pretty much ready to go.
So, she asked what this liftoff feel like. I hate to say this again, someone had like last year, but it depends on what your relative experience is, though. The G's is 3 inches, so it has itself sitting on you, whereas the fighter is down. So it's actually pretty easy to stay, like, there's no loss of consciousness like in a fighter. And I should say,
You don't want two phones. It's not
it's
fun.
different. It's not like a slam, if that makes sense. If you've ever done like the best analogy I can think of, like, I don't know if anyone's done the Disney ride, the Hollywood House of Terror thing, or like, you're like, or if you've ever been in a skyscraper, the elevators, you know you're moving, you're like, I'm going somewhere very fast. But it's not like a car accident, if that makes sense. And I think people think it's like a slam, it's not like a boom, it's this sense of like, I'm moving somewhere quickly. But the elevator doesn't stop, it just keeps going, and then as you get to the end of stage 1, stage 2, then you do hook up the 4 to 5 Gs. But again, it's more like people sitting on you as opposed to trying to stay conscious. I honestly enjoyed the re-entry way more. That was probably the most fun I've had in, no kidding, like 20 years of my life. Ever since I started flying, I can't enjoy theme parks and roller coasters. So coming back, you're disoriented. And so it was like the first time I've been tumbled in a long time, and that was awesome. Alright, so inside a minute, they're going to start, basically take over the auto sequence.
1 minute and 10 seconds. NASA SpaceX Crew-11.
FPS is armed. Falcon 9 started and is now controlling. Alright, then countdown.
And so that they basically started a script, which essentially is what they've done, is executing a script, and it's just running now.
Does mine look like a movie?
Dragon SpaceX, go for launch.
Or is it too dark?
Dragon, go for launch.
Seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Ignition full power and lift off. Go Crew-11.
Propelling Falcon 9 as the vehicle pitching down range and making its way up the East Coast, and will soon join Expedition 73 aboard the orbiting laboratory. So far, getting good callouts on that first stage performance.
We are now T plus 35 seconds into the Crew-11 mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9. The Falcon 9 engines
Stage 1 throttle down.
are throttling down to
Power and telemetry are nominal.
to help pass through the period of max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle during ascent.
Max Q.
We just had max Q right there.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
Just your 1 Bravo call from Zenith here. Good.
1 minute 9 seconds into what is a little bit
Stage 1
less than
throttle up.
a 9-minute flight uphill as Dragon continuing.
Stage 1 Bravo.
Copy. 1 Bravo.
Now 1 Bravo, again, that's the abort zone, that last abort zone for stage 1 if necessary. The crew already pulling over 2 Gs. Next, we're going to have a couple of events happen in rapid succession. We'll be getting ready for the second stage to
So your
warm up
question
and
on
have the
abort
second
for
stage
launch
have
stage
that
is
chill.
the next
And
big
then
one.
we'll
The
also
crew
have
is launching
medium
is the
or
stage
main
1
engine
cutoff and
with
stage
9
2 light.
engines on the
So on
first
the
stage
tape,
cutoff
there's
ahead
bars
of
like
the
green,
first
yellow,
and
red.
second stages,
And so
then
as
separated
stage
from one
1
another,
cuts
and
off,
then the
drops,
same
and stage
vacuum
2 lights,
engine on the
you
second
have like
stage
a
with night. You can see
deceleration
here
and
Crew-11
an
supported.
altitude drop.
While the first
And
stage
then
begins
the
its
second
journey
stage
back
doesn't
to
light the
Earth.
time.
We're now a minute and
It would be-
56
you could be
seconds
fine
into today's
to
flight.
launch, to basically initiate the launch
The
escape
9
versus
Merlin
waiting
engines
for the
are
system
starting
to
to
figure out
throttle
that
down
you're
and are
falling.
standing by for MECO, or main engine cutoff.
So that's usually a crew.
started.
We just heard
So
that
internally at the
pop-up
stage
and
step,
back
they'll
chill.
usually be saying
And
like
kind
green,
of
yellow,
in
like
under like
green, and then if
20
you got to
seconds,
yellow,
we have 5
you try to
events
see a
happening
hand
back
move
to
up
back.
there.
MECO,
Stage 1 throttle down.
stage separation, stage 1 flip, SES1, and the start of boost back burn. It's going to be pretty quick, so keep a close eye on the action and the mission event
Main engine cutoff.
tracker at the bottom
A little
of the
confusing
screen.
to Spanky's got his hands on display. He's obviously more comfortable like that.
Stage separation. And back ignition.
There, now put his
And there you
hands
see
down.
stage 1 pulling away, ignition of the Lone Merlin vacuum engine for stage 2. And again, those happening in quick succession as we continue to get great views of that Florida coastline.
Yeah, feel wise, that's probably the closest to a slam. So when you MECO, you have a little bit of like a floor to the seats, and then when the second stage ignites, that's close.
As
That's
they
the closest you
continue
get to like
to
a
climb their way
sort
up
of a
and
slam
eventually track
event.
down the International Space Station.
Is the crew on station?
And there you
watching
great
along
see, you see the
also?
Merlin vacuum
They
engine, the
might-
second stage
I-
on the right hand side.
Sometimes they'll bring it up on
Great
in
views
note on the
first
computer,
stage
but honestly
as they
depends on how
return to
busy
Earth.
they are. Sometimes the ground will call up too. It turns out it's really,
About
really hard to
5.5
see
minutes of
how
power
much is
flight
from the
remaining as we
space.
continue to monitor the progress of
I don't
both
know
vehicles,
where
stage
the
2
ground
and
track is,
Crew-11,
where they're
making the
at.
climb uphill, and then stage 1 looking to land again at landing zone 1, the last landing at that location for this Falcon 9
It looks
booster.
like they might be watching on SSD.
I think yesterday Michael said that if they would have launched yesterday, it was gonna be about 40 hours for them to dock, and
Yeah.
they said today it would be
16,
what?
so 16 or so. I think it's tomorrow morning.
We are continuing to hear great call outs over
There's
the
a-
nets that both
A wide
Dragon
variety of
and
opinions on that in our
right on
office. I
track
would have
to
preferred
orbit.
40-hour. It sounds like Nick would have preferred a
So
16.
the first stage booster is
I
now
was
on
of
its
the
way to
mentality that we spent so
landing
much time
zone 1,
training that
and we just
vehicle
saw
with
those
the crew
roof
that
and
I want to spend
on
as much
the
time
left-hand
doing.
side.
No one bothers you in there too. There's no timeline, there's no optimist.
The
There's
first stage
there is just hang out and enjoy your spaceship.
The second
And
entry
then
burn
all hell
to
breaks loose
return
when
the
you got
booster
your
a
access.
few
So
miles
I would take
During this
days.
entry burn, Falcon 9 will use its engines to pump the brakes to slow the vehicle down before it reaches the denser parts of the Earth's atmosphere. And if you didn't know, Falcon 9 has a complex heat shield that is designed to protect the engines and the
Yeah, I
vehicle
think the cool
from
thing
all
about
that
the Dragon
combined
too is it's
thermal and
coming
aerodynamic
from
loading during
a
max
small
entry Q,
plane
which is the
background.
moment of max
You can
stress
hear
on the vehicle during entry.
the thrusters
And that
fire,
will be
actually you can
followed
hear
by
the black
landing
valves
burn.
open,
And
you
this
can hear
burn will
prop
last for
going
about
through the wall behind you, so it's really cool, I think, like to hear the machine you're in actually doing things. And on the ISS, it's a little more sterile. Like when they do boosts and stuff, you don't actually even know.
Great performance
until
calls
the flight control
continue
team
as
tell
we're
you
now
that
5
they did a
minutes
burn, and I
into today's flight.
I don't know, I was a space when it was happening, there's no windows, you kind of forget. You did shoot
perform on the
when
right
you're in the capsule, you definitely know you're
24 minutes
at that
per second.
things.
Crew-11 cruising
How much
into
room is in the actual
upper
capsule? Like if you're gonna
echelons of
spend
Earth's
40 or
atmosphere, we'll
16 hours in there,
continue
is
to
there?
There's, so you can kind of see, like, what, in zero, in microgravity, there's a lot more room, you can stack people, so you can be under the seats there, where the cargo shaft, so you can fit like 1 or 2 people between that. You can fit another person up by the side hatch, which we don't use in space, we use for egress and ingress. And then you can fit like another person up there wearing diving hatch, so you can actually spread out pretty easily. The toilet is, so like, if you were going to the toilet, then imagine there'd be like a black curtain above where their knees are, and you're on the other side of it. So it is, if you're used to camping and you're getting close spaces, it's not a big deal. That's one of the things obviously we screen for. Confined spaces, I have to be okay with that, but that's not the only downside of extended periods of time up there, but if.
We are coming up on the entry burn, which is just under 30 seconds from now. And so you'll see the first stage's center Merlin engine reignite as it comes back down to Earth. And after that, we will be approaching. And there is the beginning of entry burn right there. Again, this is the second of 3 burns to return the booster
So
to
at this
landing
point,
zone 1.
one of the displays the crew has is, so they have a display, they have like procedures and they have a center display
Just
above the
made
roll
it
map.
through entry burn.
And it's showing like a propagation of the trajectory.
And you're getting
When
some
you
great
get to
views
that
too on stage
altitude
one's
and then
returning
that
before
speed,
it
it's
goes
kind of cool if you can actually visualize the
right-hand side,
orbital
second
trajectory and
stage.
figure out where you would come down if you had a board.
Engine
And it's kind of this cool, because like at this point, you're just accelerating, right? You're not going up anymore, you're just going faster. And so it's really that line, as the G builds, it corresponds to how quickly that line is propagating out into the world. It's kind of a cool sensation. It's a really cool display space. It's neat, and the students get to see it. It's like you actually
We are now very
understand
quickly
the physics
approaching
of
the
what's
start
happening
of
with
our
the
landing
picture that's
burn,
happening.
where 3 engines 1, 5, and 9, will relight to help slow the vehicle down just before it touches down on landing zone 1. We should hopefully have some great tracking shots of that.
Stage 1 landing burn. Stage 2 FTS and stage. Stage 1 landing boy.
Okay, so imagine that like 100 times bigger. That's what we need to do on the moon.
A successful landing of the first stage booster as we continue to follow along with a little less now than 1 minute of powered flight of the second stage. And you'll hear the call out SECO or second engine cutoff is great view there, glowing orange with the
So this is getting to the highest G loading, so it's like 4 or 5.
that thermal
Again,
vacuum
through your
engine,
chest.
everything continues to perform
And
normally.
it probably would be
We're
more
now
violent when
stage
it cuts off, but you're strapped in so tight that the straps essentially mask any movement, like you don't really actually have any give in that. But you can tell,
About
I
20
don't
more
know what their
seconds
zero G
remaining on
indicator is, but
power
that's one way you can tell. And also,
shortly as
that
they
feeling, if
continue.
you've ever been on a roller coaster where it's falling off that first thing, you get that sensation internally. So
And
you're
there's
like
a great
something's
calls for Shannon, we
not
talked about
normal.
earlier, that last abort zone if necessary, where they can land off the
Do
coast.
they use
of
previously
Shannon,
flown
Ireland.
boosters for crewed launches?
They do, yep.
Okay.
SECO.
They didn't originally, that, I can't remember what flight they,
Here we just
Did that on.
heard that good call out for SECO or second engine cutoff.
but yeah, they use both, yeah.
Coming up next
I think
will
it's
be
up to
stage
10
separation.
times. Not
SpaceX, not all
per time, I think it's 10 times they can use it for human flight.
And that's the great call you want to hear.
Coaches can see 10 tilt.
A good look inside the trunk there as you're looking for that separation, but you want to hear that nominal orbital insertion as Crew-11 now has reached microgravity.
So they're starting to scroll to the next
Now we'll
display, which
continue
is
to
watching
for a little bit.
the rates null out, so they're still attached to the second stage.
From the
That's what
birds
you're
fell
saying,
out.
but they've got a display that's telling them what the residual rates are, and they're
Right now we
waiting
have
for
a
those to
great
damp.
view
And
on our
then,
screen of the
if
dragon
pyros will
windshield
fire
actually,
that essentially
which is
separate, and
made
they're
of
watching for good
similar
separation. You see
materials.
they're already loosening
And
their
there we
straps.
have that dragon and stage 2 separation. As you see dragon coast into its orbit.
A wonderful view there is Dragon Endeavor with Crew-11 on board, safe and safe.
So they can't unstrap yet, but they can loosen their shoulder straps. That's kind of the first time you can tell you're just sort of hovering in the seat as opposed to actually your weight holding in the seat.
On behalf of the entire Falcon team, thank you for flying with us today and wish you a great mission. Dragon will take you from here. Over to Launch Director for a few words.
On behalf of the launch team, it's been an absolute honor working with you towards launch today. We wish you well in the rest of your mission, and we will be awaiting your safe return. Godspeed Endeavor, Godspeed Crew-11, and thanks for flying SpaceX.
Airline pilot.
Dragon, I have no emotions but joy right now. That was absolutely transcendent. Ride of a lifetime. Thank you. This has been an incredible honor. And it's my privilege now to pass the microphone along to Mike for the position word.
Boy, it's great to be back in orbit again. Thank you to SpaceX and NASA to get us here. What a ride. And Sabina, as always, let me be the second to welcome you to your first orbit around beautiful planet Earth. Kimi-san, Okayeri Nasai, welcome back. And to the ISS Expedition 73 team, the crew on board and our friends in MCC, we're on our way. Over to you, Kimi-san.
Okay, thank you very much for everything. FOCR-1ご視聴ありがとうございます。日本の皆さん、私も10年ぶりに宇宙に帰ってきました。ISS でしっかりと任務を
You kind of see the displays. That middle one is the middle one is that worldview I was talking about. It's got some procedural events. The outboard ones now, they both have a redundant. They're both looking at, so they're looking. Essentially, it's a HUD or a HUDs-up display. It's a space version of that, and then they'll usually have dissimilar video sources feeding that. So if one locks up, the other person has it. But that's got all the critical events. We call them widgets. They give you sort of the critical system stats around the edges, and then you can always deep dive into the sub-menus if there's a system issue. Spanky's got to be the only person in the office that's using an old school egg timer. If you see it. We've got like 15 timers in that spacecraft, but he's got the egg timer just in case. That's why he was digging around on that panel up there when you saw his hands during launch. He was probably doing staging timing.
Does he speak Japanese too?
Spanky? I don't know if he speaks Japanese. He speaks a little Hindi and Russian, but I'm not sure.
Hey, so we're gonna take, would you take one and pass them down so everybody can get a.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then give one of these too.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, just if you can pass those down, it'd be great.
The zero-G indicator is actually a lot more complicated than I ever anticipated. They actually have to test it. So you need two zero-G indicators. They actually send it through like a qual test program where they like pull it and make sure it's not going to like disintegrate and survive. Microgravity explode.
Members of Crew-11 and the astronauts and cosmonauts, all that cadre, they're well on their way to the Final destination, which they had about a 16-hour ride to do so in the phasing.
And they usually cut the video pretty quickly for two reasons. One is if the crew wants to get out of their suits because they've been on their backs for a while, they probably seen all loading zones, get out, clean up. And also, if there's anyone that's getting commercial safety, it's better just like half the time. So they take their cameras, what they call externals, so they can get out, change, get decent again before they bring the cameras back inside.
We've just gotten confirmation that no. Just had great comms that no time deployed is underway. The 6 of 7 took in place during these
And then,
launches.
yeah, they're also watching the nose cone open. That's the next major like structural thing that they're monitoring. And once the nose cones open, you know you're ready to go to the space station. If the nose cone fails, then you go, that gets more complicated. But that's kind of like the last major mechanical event that has to happen. And then from there on, it's just thrusters and trying to move. Any other questions?
Yes, I had one.
Yeah.
At what?
And you guys can leave. You don't have to say it. Be ready to go.
At what G-force is it quasi impossible for you to move your arm? I know for Artemis 2, commanders they have is control of the fingertips in case they cannot touch the switches.
Yeah, so I mean, you can do it all the way up, like, honestly, like, you test up to 9 Gs, so you can still move around, but it's just the fidelity of things, so moving the cursor or inputting data at 9 Gs would be much different than just like grabbing a handle. So that's like, boarding, yes, you can do that at 9 Gs, but putting in coordinates, probably not 9 Gs.